feel kind
If
of
the date
bad.
wrong.
Well, that was when Brian was like, Anton's supposed to be convening his precinct. Like, where is he? Like, I can send him a message. I don't know.
I was pretty convinced it was, I thought, that's all I kept, I mean, it shows how much attention I paid.
Yeah, well, it's probably gonna be the last one, so
Yeah. I didn't even understand what the point of doing it was.
just to gather information. So, all right, let's roll. Ready? All right, call the meeting to order. Everybody's here. Mike went to the dentist, so
Yeah.
cross your fingers about that. Not, I mean, he was at the dentist before the meeting. He thought that
Somewhere
he
else?
probably wasn't, no, here, but he just
Oh.
didn't think that he'd want to come back after
Oh.
having been at the dentist.
Got it.
So hopefully
They
everything
treat him,
turned out
treat him
right.
that harshly there?
Yeah, exactly.
So what happened to him?
I
Does that be
told them they should give him as much of the nitrous as they could, but anyway. All right, so now it's time for the open forum. So if anyone has anything they'd like to address the council, come on up, tell us who you are, and then say your bit. If not, you guys cool? You good? Okay. Close the open forum, move on to the consent agenda. Pretty simple today, the typical 3 things on the consent agenda. Unless someone would like to pull something for discussion, I would entertain a motion to approve it as presented.
I'd make that motion, but are we adding this one item for the purchase
Yep.
of
Okay.
that one too?
Good. So with the addition of an additional bill for firewood for the campground. Is there a second for that motion?
I'd second that.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have a question, and maybe
Mhm.
Chris can, I don't know if it matters. This is in regards to someone who I deal with through my other job. Does it matter?
This is something related, can you explain that a little more?
Well, I don't directly, I guess I don't directly pay him. The other job that I have has dealings with him, Chris. I do payables there. I do some payroll when the person does a few things for us. So he has been on payroll at times when I do payroll. I don't have any sort of relationship with him, the company.
So you're not making decisions about him being paid or any of those kinds of things?
No, I'm not.
Okay, I don't see a conflict. I
Okay.
think you're okay.
Thank you.
So it's good to check those things out. Any further discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All right, so we've got this this item on our agenda. It says dog pound, or animal pound. So let's get down to the memo. Did you guys have a chance to read the memo that that Mike sent out? He did a good job of summarizing the situation, and I would, I think that I probably would confuse it more readily than if we just read through the memo and talked about that. So the basis of what we're getting at here is that we need to move the pound, and that there's a site in the business park where the PUC has requested a land for a solar installation, but they don't need the entire property. So then the pound could then be located in the remaining chunk of property at the business park to allow for that to be a permanent home for it. In order to move ahead, the city and the county will need to agree that the lot is suitable for the use and make a request to the EDA to transfer ownership, figure out how to do it, how to deal all that stuff out. So basically what we're asking, like what the question for the council is this a suitable location for us to pursue for the pound? Is this the place that we want to have it? Is this how we want to pursue this, a solution to the pound going away down at the rec park? And do we authorize city administration to go down that path? So, does that make sense? Does that seem good enough? Good enough summary?
Yeah, and we've talked about this, kind of on and off for, a number of years, and knowing that the boat launch facility was going to be requiring us to do something, I think this is a good step to start this conversation. The question I have here with this, with the memo, says that when we evaluated a number of potential locations and determined that location seemed suitable, who is the "we" that, came up with that conclusion? I mean,
Well, there were a couple of different conversations. So this conversation that he's referring to in the memo is specifically the conversation between myself, Sheriff Pat Elias, and Mike, and kind of through some emails, Rena Rogers, who was acting as the county administrator at the time. Before that, I met with the Arrowhead Animal Rescue a couple of times to try and figure out sites that would be appropriate. And so we looked at spaces up by the recycling center and spaces up by the PUC garage and a couple of other locations around that had been kind of floated. And they were either not suitable due to space concerns, not suitable because of there was, safety concerns, like as far as where are we going to safely walk animals, or how are animals going to get in and out, that kind of a thing, or people going to get in and out, or the properties weren't available. So those were kind of the limiting factors for that conversation. So the lot in the business park checks all those boxes. It's available. It has no safety concerns. It provides space for a dog run and for the building, as per state standards. So that's why that one rose to the top of the.
yeah, I just wondered who was involved in that kind of determination, so I just want to make sure all those parties were part of that.
Yep. So it's, through a couple of different levels of conversations, but yes, we've gotten to a point where I feel like all the parties that have an interest in this have given feedback, and have kind of pointed that this would be a sufficient solution.
Yeah, and the conversation that's taken place at the Public Utilities Commission about, putting in a solar array, involved that portion just to the north of the Como tanks.
Oh, great.
And so if you see the map, you can see that the lot wouldn't require very much of the lot being taken up with the solar panels if that was done. So there would be a fair amount of the lot left over to provide other uses.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's really the request, and that's the solution that's come up through conversations. So, we're still very early in the process here. Obviously, there is a time frame on this. We would like to have some kind of a solution in place as soon as we can. This is kind of our leading option at the present, but we do admit that we haven't exhausted all of our possibilities. So if anybody has any crazy ideas or any big time questions or thoughts, then now is the time to toss them out there.
When does the pound have to be moved by?
We don't know exactly.
Weren't they going to start this summer?
They are going to start this summer, but when we're talking exactly, that could be May, it could be August, depending on when they get the pavement laid down out there. So I'm assuming that they'll probably want that facility moved sooner rather than later, so that they don't have people coming into a construction site.
So if it's sooner, if it's May or June, where are these animals going?
In the meantime, well, this plan, if we're able to mobilize this plan, there's no reason that we couldn't start building that facility in short order. One of the partnerships that the sheriff brought up was a potential partnership with the school shop class, industrial arts class,
So
to work on building it
what
this spring.
is there any design for a size, a concept, what we want it to be for 10 years down the road?
Yep, we're working on that. We researched what the state standards were for a pound. This is not going to be a shelter. Will never be a shelter. So we don't want to
Never say never.
Yeah, well, here's hoping, right? But we in order to meet the need that that we've historically had to be up to snuff with state codes and to honor our ordinance, we have an idea of what that'll require. We haven't invested any time or energy into putting together designs for that. If we vote that we have a direction that we want to take with this, then that would probably be the next step, would be to start seeing what we have for a design and what kind of partners we can bring in with that, like contractors, et cetera.
Because I'm assuming they need to have utilities there, right?
Well, the utilities are right up the street, so.
Yeah, but I mean, electric, water, those kind of things would need, heat would need to all be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I had a conversation with, maybe it was with you, Tim, I can't remember, but the conversation was, that lower part is going to have the solar panels on it, and so the idea of having the pound itself be, have electric heat in it, and have that be something that then could be, not written off by those solar panels, because that's not the way our contract is, but having that be part of the, the idea is to have it be heated electrically, so that it's not going to be a major source of concern or expense for making sure that tanks are filled, et cetera, et cetera. So there's lots of concepts floating around. We just basically need to nail some down and make sure that we know what we're going from. So if the council wants to pursue this or wants to pursue a different plan, then we can start working on that.
And works for animal advocates, they're happy with it?
Yes.
Then I kind of think we need to get moving on something, and I think if they're happy with it and with the research done, this would be a really good spot. There's ample opportunity to reach it, there's utilities, it's close to the sheriff's department.
It's close to the vet too, Dr. Samari's vet down there, which
Very
is
true.
handy.
And if by chance there's potential that we need something new by June, I think things need to get moving since it's almost basically March 1st.
Right.
So that leads just to another question, is this going to be a city facility, or is it going to be a joint city-county facility? We've talked about that in the past, of having some kind of partnership or arrangement with the county to have it not, because a lot of the dogs that go in there, a lot of the animals that go in there are not from within
Right.
the city, and have those conversations gone anywhere to result in anything?
The understanding that I came away with from the meeting that I had with the sheriff and with with the county largely, was that the county's investment would be the sheriff, enforcing the city ordinance, for that. We haven't crunched numbers to see how often animals from outside the city end up at the city pound. But I don't think that it's unreasonable to have the county acknowledge that there are lots of county animals that are housed in the city facility. My understanding is that in the current structure, the city would be the owner of the building.
Well, basically, I'm sure there's some county animals. I think historically what we find is there's a lot of people that come to the area that aren't even from our county that have animals get away from them. If they're picked up, they go there. So, I mean, that occurs too. We're the ones that do have the ordinance in place. If we're calling it a pound, meeting the ordinances, to me, it kind of falls on us, and any other help that we can find is great, but I kind of think that we need to know that this might be ours.
Right. Well, and historically, the city has always, we've paid for the utilities at the existing pound because we understand that's kind of the cost of doing business, of having an ordinance that, that oversees, animal behavior in the community. And I believe that that's about.
Thing to do.
Yeah, that seems like that hasn't changed. So looking for partners in building expense, to share the building expense, and also having AAR to actually, operate the facility.
So a couple things need to happen. One, we need to pursue then the acquisition of this parcel you know, the other is we need to start thinking about the actual facility design and how that's going to happen, especially if it's going to be in relationship to another, you know, use of the property, how and where they share that site.
Right.
So those things need to get,
Started, yep.
Yes.
And so so us moving forward with it here is really the first bit of us saying, okay, now we're ready to open this can and go down this road. So that's the skinny on that. So,
Do we have any issues with wetlands in that area?
no.
that's some pretty high
Well,
laying area.
There- And those, the area of that lot that was,
Where the bottom blue line is a
Wetland.
trench, I think, something like that.
well, the
They already trenched it out.
drainage comes through there.
Yeah.
But there was also a wetland that was identified, but that has been, I don't know,
I've got this map of the Cedar
I'm
Grove
sorry, about your
delineations.
canoe area wilderness.
Yep.
And so this is all
See that
wetlands.
on the map?
Yep, and that has been remediated.
It has.
Or whatever, that's been,
Great.
yep.
Okay.
Who knew?
Well,
Circles and-
I think it's clear that like something has to happen. I feel like it's a little bit, it's gonna be pretty tough to try and do something like, just by the nature of identifying partner groups and how that, like what the actual framework of how that's gonna work is gonna go.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if it means we're gonna have to try and organize like an extra meeting in here to try and move something forward, to figure out like what that, I mean, yeah.
I don't
mean,
think-
To
I don't
not
think-
even have a design, like, and potentially wanting to go as soon as like frost is out of the ground, like, if we're, you know, not having designs and wanting to start that, that's pretty,
Pretty tight, yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, or it can happen, but that costs money. And do we, I mean, and not having, I'm 100% for, like, I understand that this is something that needs to happen, but I guess
A lot of the
it's a little
logistics for
frustrating
this.
that it's this,
Yeah. I feel like we're on the back end of it, not the front end of it, and we've known.
Yep.
all right.
So, yeah, the logistics are something that very obviously will have to be ironed out. But I do think that we can, the facility itself is gonna be pretty basic, you know? So coming up with a plan for what the facility is actually gonna look like, what kind of space we need, how to break that space up, those are things that we have answers for already. Getting someone to draw, you know, a rectangular building that has the things that we need in it, and then plopping that in that space where it fits and connecting it to utilities, all that stuff is stuff that we can wrap our heads around pretty quick.
Well, it's finding the people to do it and partnering, and I'm sure that
That's, I guess, my.
frost going out isn't gonna be all that long.
No,
We didn't have a
probably not.
harsh winter,
There's
and I'm sure contractors are filling up.
Stormwater design that has to be done for retention pond, that has to get done, that has to be engineered in, because that's mandatory for all the lots in the business park. So there's that engineering process that has to happen. And then I think like having a clear understanding of exactly where, I mean, it is for a business park lot, a pretty large lot, but making sure, I mean, if that is that gray line that's kind of following that, you know, 30 feet in or whatever from the west property line, if that is a ditch, making sure that the PUC and whatever happens with how they're gonna tie their new system in, if they put a solar farm up there, how that gets tied back in to the grid or whatever, I don't understand how that all works, but making sure that there's yeah, I mean, so I guess that's it, right? It's not just the building, right? Because that, you're right, absolutely, that could be as simple as just following the standards of what they're calling for, and then communicating with partner groups to figure out exactly, and whether that's animal allies or the sheriff's department, to figure out what we want to have for capacity.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, but then also some sort of understand, I'm assuming that the solar farm would also want some potential opportunity to expand in that too, right? I haven't followed that conversation very much, but
That would be Tim's
if
comment
there's
on that,
something
but-
like, you know, it seems like you just would wanna like, in both situations, and the fact that we're trying to combine and make that property work as hard as possible, to just make sure that all the design decisions that are made as far as site plan go, don't make either one of those projects kind of like, ooh, shoot, you know what I mean?
Right,
Like, so
yeah.
that there, it's gonna take a little bit of thought, I guess.
They have
is
to be
my-
coexist, and we have to make sure that we put in
And
all the
access,
infrastructure
right,
necessary.
access for construction of that, for maintenance of the solar installation, I mean, so, yeah, do we have to, what do we have to do, like, to get this rolling, and like, to get to the next steps?
Well, we have
approach-
to vote, yeah, we have to vote that
I'd make
we're
a
gonna
motion
pursue
that we
this.
start pushing this thing forward.
Okay.
I will second.
Motion and a second, any further discussion? We fully acknowledge that there's a lot of work that needs to be done here, and that's why we need to, you know, start
mean,
now. and work on
The
it.
boundary waters is right down there.
I know, we have to think about that.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Why is
Right.
that there?
It's pretty funny.
And so with the PUC solar installation, what we had talked about initially was about a tenth of an acre, so that's 4,000 square feet roughly. We were thinking about that, at that lower end, close to the propane tanks. And with the idea that it could be expanded, but that lot is, I think it's 2.3 acres or something like that, seems to.
I think it's
seems
a little bigger than that, but
Yeah,
it's.
so there's a
ballpark.
lot of room to work with, you know, I don't know how much room that is gonna get set aside for the shelter, but, for the pound, but, you know, with the size of the lot, I mean, there's plenty of room for doing the solar project and putting in the facility for the animals, so.
So how do we address then, in like the next steps on that, and like who's involved with that? Is that something like it's all council level, or is that something we push to city staff then, on top of everything else? Or is it like, how do we have those communications then between, yeah, I mean, how do we move it forward besides just saying, yeah, if we're all in agreement and this passes?
Yeah, that'd be largely city staff. I would expect that when we go before the county, that I'd probably go and do the presentation, you know, to the county to say like, hey, we need your help here, let's do this.
I mean, and so then that creates that, like, what, if we know this is something that we have to move forward on, do we try and like get design, some of that aspect stuff done, so that when you go to present, you're able to speak in, you know, clearly to
I think
what,
that makes sense, yeah.
right?
That was kind of my intention, after we talk about it tonight, to then push that we get designs, either that be designs that we put together, or designs that
Well, yeah,
that the sheriff puts together, or whatever, you know.
we gotta identify the partners that are gonna be in on this, then we gotta identify the financing, where it's coming from,
Mhm.
you know, and ultimately have a building, a plan, and a budget.
Right. And that's.
And that's
the-
what has to be done before we,
Well, I think
ultimately,
don't we have to design and go forward with it because it's our ordinance, it's what we need? And then if we want to go ask partnering groups what they can contribute, I don't want to sit and wait around. We've known about this. I don't want to sit and wait around and say, well, we're going to wait to hear from this person and wait to hear from that person. And now we're at June and we haven't done anything and now we have a need for it.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, and that's right now we're pushing right up against the limit of
Yeah.
any kind of realistic, you know, expectation that we get something done here. In response to your comments, largely the stakeholders have been informed of this and have been a part of the conversation with this. How we choose to move forward and execute this is really the thing that we need to figure out, you know?
Let's find the fastest path. Let's not make it harder than it has to be.
Right, well, and
You know
we've
what I mean?
we've already gotten the nods from all the people that we feel we need to have tied in on it. You know, AAR, the sheriff.
What about, have you talked to Mary, or has Mike talked to Mary?
We've talked to Mary about it, and she, you know, said that there's a process to go through to get that lot turned over. So it's, you know, that's just the way that we're gonna have to deal with it.
And even that approach, and maybe, I mean, especially if the PUC is gonna be involved. Yeah, I mean, like that, it's almost like it would be simpler if it was just, like the pound, right?
Right.
I mean, it's great, I think, for like cost sharing, if like it is gonna be a PUC installation, that there is, right, like whether it's from the electrical fund or like however it works to like make that stuff work, but I feel like maybe that also adds an extra step of, or not.
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's really the idea that the title would transfer from the EDA to the city. The city would own the lot
Okay.
and, you know.
Then go from there.
Then, yes.
Because once the city's in control of the lot, then we can, then putting the pound up is just as, as fast as we can get somebody in there with designs and stuff to do it. So-
The agreement that has to happen, though, is that both the city and the county have to decide that they're willing to not accept and not take any money for payment of the assessment.
Gotcha.
So that's the decision that the city and the county have to come together on this, to decide that that's,
Okay.
That's worth it.
yeah.
Yeah.
That we're talking about something that would be beneficial here. So, yes, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? I mean, we've brought up some really, really good points and things that we need to get on right away. So you can expect, I think you should expect to have updates, almost every meeting.
I was
about
gonna
how
say,
this
it'd be
is
nice to
going.
have updates. That's why I suggested such a long time ago that we have old business on our agenda, because there's things that we can just keep coming back to until they're done and off of it. This would be one of them that we could continue to follow, because it would be nice to hear every couple weeks where we're at, so we don't drop it and miss something.
Right. So then we can make a note on that too. I think that we're gonna have to move pretty quick on this one too. So, every 2 weeks we should have, at least something to say about updating it. So, any other discussion?
I guess maybe one question.
Yeah.
So, we'd have to have, I was just thinking about like with the EDA, like is a conversation with the EDA first as far as that, or it's really just a conversation with the county to accept the
assessment.
side of
Or
it?
not
Then,
accept the assessment.
then the EDA's, or the county's representative on the EDA.
Yep. And then it just
Our-
basically transfers
Okay.
over with whatever kinds of MOIs we need for that to work.
Okay.
So, anything else?
No?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay, so we will start getting to work on that, so that we can get a animal pound in place as soon as we possibly can. And if we need to arrange something for like gap between getting the pound put together and when the pound has to be removed from the rec park, then we can discuss that as well.
Can we try to have a conversation with DNR about the their construction plans down there to get a better idea of the timing, so that
Yeah.
we're not aiming for May and when we really have till September or whatever,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big difference in timing, and
Right.
pushing a project that fast sometimes is,
That should be a relatively easy conversation to have. I'm pretty sure that at this point, that project is already pretty in the can for when
Yep.
things are gonna start and whatnot, so. Okay, so we can do that, definitely. So, really excruciatingly long meeting here. Now it's time for council and staff reports, so Craig, you got anything?
Nope, not yet. Next meeting, haven't had one yet.
All right. Anton? Nothing? Tim? Yeah, he's too busy skiing. Kelly?
No, just wondering for a future meetings, since we're moving into March and April, if we want to try and get maybe Sheriff Eliason and Kristen Foster on the agenda so that we talk about parking ordinance, how it went, and what we're going to do and what it's really designed for, because I think there's still some questions about that as to what it's meant to do and what to be and how we want to move forward with it. I'm still noticing people aren't following it now, and I know snow is melting and all that, but we still have really narrow streets. And when people aren't following it, it's really hard to get through when 2 cars are coming.
Or one car.
Or sometimes
car.
one,
Yeah.
or one larger
Depends on where you
vehicle,
are.
yeah. But I think we need to go back and revisit and make sure that we have a clear understanding of what it is that we're doing and what our expectations are.
Okay,
Yep.
sounds reasonable. Well, I met with AAR yesterday to talk over, some frameworks for all of this. So I basically gave you a summary of that already. The library board met on Monday. That was the first meeting with Amanda St. John as the official director. And I gotta say, man, like, she's organized. Like, it was really, really lovely to go in there and she had all the information exactly how, like, easy to understand and in really clear manners and broken down into specific memos and things like that. I was really pleased. And so that, the process is gonna be starting shortly to hire an assistant director to fill that position that she vacated. So that will likely go for a couple of months, and then hopefully we'll be all back up to full staff at the library. So that's good. Let's see, what else? Oh, Mike and I went down last Thursday to Duluth to discuss some of the concerns or all of the concerns, I should say, that property owners along the corridor had with the condemnation letters that had gone out. And MnDOT fully admitted that the condemnation letters had gone out in such a way that was not super responsible. Was not responsible to the property owners, and was very inflammatory, as far as what the language on the letters said and how people were supposed to respond to them. So that was very interesting. There were 28 letters that were sent out to properties along the corridor, 3 of which belonged to the city, and 2 of which were erroneous. Like, when we actually took them out and looked at them on the map, we were like, oh, this isn't even a problem. And so then,
On
they're
the
gonna.
city ones or just on private?
Just private property. Like, there are 2 private property ones that when we actually looked at the survey marks and everything like that, they were, there was no issue. And so then we were just like, well, then you better send them a letter apologizing for the fact that you sent them this letter, this erroneous letter. And so we were trying to create strategies to help MnDOT and the property owners to resolve these as fast as possible, or at least to get an understanding of what the expectations are. Because if MnDOT doesn't have an understanding of what's happening with these different areas by the time they start construction, then they, the way that it's all written, they have the right to just basically go in there and clear it all out.
So how many unresolved parcels are we talking about?
I mean,
26?
20, yeah,
28 if
26,
two were-
yeah, I mean.
I don't know how the court hearing turned out, but there's a couple parcels
Right.
where there's legal descriptions that aren't right. And so they're trying to figure out those legal descriptions and who owns what land, and what land. The state can't really do anything until those legal descriptions are straightened out, and I don't know where that sits right now. There was
Yeah.
2 hearings on that.
Right,
I was part of one, but then we didn't have a legal description problem. We just have other issues
Other
along
issues.
with other 28 other people. So, I mean, it's
and one of the, so that one, when, last Thursday when we talked, the judge was in the process of issuing his decision on that, so that should be coming out in the next week to see what exactly the process will be for those properties.
yeah.
And like, one of the things that really stood out to me is that, MnDOT is such a large organization that really the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing most of the time. And that really does not help them in dealing with individual property owners, because, the ombudsman is working with property owners to resolve some of these property situations, while the land services people are working in a different way to help resolve things for the same property owners, when while the head engineer it just doesn't know what's going on. So that's something that we're hoping this meeting on Thursday really helped to take some of the questions out of that, or at least, brought some of those pieces of information together so that we can move forward without having so many mysteries on it. But we shall see. We shall see. So that was basically most of my day on Thursday. We all had a workshop last Wednesday on the City Hall liquor store development. And then the Violence Prevention Center had a meeting that evening to discuss their activities for 2020. I believe that is all that I had. So, is there any additional business that we need to consider this evening? No? Hearing none, then we are adjourned. 7:05. Wow.
Wow.
Wow, that's right. Don't get used
Well,
to
Have a
that.
good night,
Yeah, that's right.
everybody.
Good night, Chris.
Good night.
Bye.